Next is from Stephen Mackey. The subject is Buff Bagwell and Shane Helms questions. Dear Conan and Disco, have you guys heard about the incident with Buff Bagwell and Shane Helms back in 2001, shortly before the invasion angle started? Apparently, Buff took some shots at Helms about his work, and then Helms came back and about looking like a male stripper and going bald. Buff slapped Helms from behind, which led to Helms reacting by throwing a frozen water bottle at him, cracking Bagwell's head open. A couple of days later, Buff then has that match with Booker T on Raw, which was universally pinned, and then about 7 days after that, he got fired. Who do you guys think would win an actual fight between two? I know you mentioned before about Buff getting into fights with guys in nightclubs back in the WCW days, Disco, but I never heard any other stories about Shane Helms winning any other fights. I know he punched Jericho in a cab once while both were intoxicated, but in 2003, he confronted Rodney Mack and he got his ass handed to him. Is that true? I never hear that story. Also, do you think Shane Helms knew what he was doing all along? I feel like a guy like Shane is smart enough to know how to pick his battles. If Buff had won, nobody would have cared, but because an undercard guy like Helms beat an upper mid-card guy like Bagwell, then he gained something from it. And he obviously did because he got over with all the WWF boys at the time who all hated Buff. And that's regards Stephen Mackey from Aberdeen, Scotland. I'll just tell you both about both of these guys, okay? Shane obviously grew up fighting a lot in North Carolina down south. So sometimes around south you got to fight a lot, all right? Shane would never back down from a fight. Like he's the type of guy you would want in a foxhole with you in a war because he doesn't care the size of the thing. He'll stick up for himself. Buff is the exact same way. Buff will never back down from a fight for everybody. And this is what happens when you have two people that will never back down from a fight. If one guy slaps the other guy, you're going to get action. You know, it's like this. That's all this was. These are two guys that never will back down from a fight. And they had an incident with each other. That's the way I looked at it. What do you think, Conan? Do you remember this?
I wasn't in WWE when this happened.
Right, but this was a story. Obviously, everybody knew about it.
Yeah. I don't.
Yeah, but that just Shane's a type. Shane's a fighter. He won't back down. I remember when he was a skinny little kid. I didn't know him at the time. Okay, but he wrestled in the North Georgia Wrestling, organization. Where the first organization I was in when I was green. Where I trained, right? We wrestled in an auction barn in Alpharetta, Georgia.
Kid Vicious?
He was Kid Vicious. He was in the ring, and the Booker's brother, they were working, but the Booker's brother thought they were shooting because the Booker's brother was hurt, and his brother, my trainer, hit the ring. My trainer's a big guy. By the way, my trainer passed away recently. So that was bad news. Steve Lawler, R.I.P. He was overweight. So, and I don't think I don't know if he's vaccinated or not, but he got him. So, but he was a big guy, way bigger than skinny Shane. Shane was way skinnier and smaller than he was back then. Bro, Shane did not back down. Shane did, we were all in the locker room, joking, here was Steve, hit the ring on this guy, and then this little kid was not backing down and wanted at him.
Right.
Now that's Shane Helms, so that's like I said, I knew this from years ago. This guy had a lot of fight in him. When I found out it was him later on, it's like, oh, that makes sense. So.
Yeah, but that's an interesting question, though. Do you think it crossed his mind, geez, Buff's not politically connected. He's kind of disliked. If I stepped to him, you don't think
it's a guy like that you slap in the face, his immediate reaction is
he's just going to.
Yes, absolutely. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. You can tell by the way Shane argues with people on Twitter. He's kind of.
Not only that, bro.
Yeah,
he would have
kick in the balls or rake the eyes.
Here's the other part, and here's the other part too. He also knows that if he wouldn't have done anything, he would have been buried and in that dressing room for life.
Right.